Hey guys, Fish Tank Mike here. Today we're going to be taking a fish tank that looks like this and turning it into this. Unfortunately, the current USA complete setup 4-foot 65-ish gallon tank has just turned into this. So it's a holding tank for the curries. All of my curries that we have in this tank are ones that bred, and there's even some newer ones in here. So they had a couple babies while they've been in here, but enough's enough. If we got to turn this thing into something that actually commands a little bit of respect, something that you want to look at. So let's go ahead and start that process. Not sure if I've really mentioned this yet, but we are going to be creating a floating type of aquascape. So this is inspiration from Oliver Knott. He's done probably more than a few tanks like this. There's one in particular that maybe I can find a picture. I have to put it over the screen here so you can see what I'm talking about, but I've wanted to do a tank like this for forever. So we have a few pieces of manzanita wood here, some bigger stuff. I've already got them zip tied because that's what I did in the fish store to try and visualize what this thing is going to eventually look like. So this is what I have come up with. It's kind of hard to tell exactly how it's going to look. We'll see what it does in the tank, but I think it's going to look good. So we have kind of this double branchy thing, and it'll look a lot better with plants. You know, the last thing I'm trying to figure out is if we should do some foam filling in here, so that way we have these little pockets where we can put some stem plants, like some colorful rotala or just anything else. So I'm going to think about that while we take down the tank. And that is probably going to take me a while. We need to get the fish out. We have a tub for that. We'll talk about that probably when we're done doing it. So let's get started. So here's what our final piece looks like, guys. I've already taken off all the zip ties. I decided to not leave them on and just go through and super glue all the various points where the wood touches. I think that's going to look a lot better, and it should be easier to hide, right? I don't have to hide the zip ties, so we can put less stuff on this thing. But there's the cavity that we're going to put some substrate in, and I think if I position this right, if it's hanging like this, then it should work out just fine. So filled it with foam, and then once it kind of halfway dries, you get in there and you press it in with your fingers. It kind of pops some of the bigger bubbles, and that's how we have that cavity. A little bit right there to prevent anything from slipping out. I think we're good to go. Walking out to the tank just the next day, guys, and you can already see the tinge in the water, so some tannins coming off of that manzanita wood. This is probably as bad as it would get if I had to guess, just because manzanita doesn't throw a ton of tannins. Might get a little bit worse, but usually it's not creating enough turbidity in the water to where you can't see through it. So that's typical. That's what I was expecting. What I wasn't expecting was how fast the cyanobacteria can bounce back. So that is just literally like 10 hours of growth after having mixed everything up in here. Just wanted to highlight that, show that. I think it's kind of cool. The microbiologist in me thinks that's cool. The fish keeper does not. So now that the temperature is back to, I don't know, 75, 76, 77, we're going to add our fish. But I do want to check the water and see what the parameters are of this, because I was a little shocked when I did a test strip yesterday on the water that was in this originally and the water in their holding bin. The hardness was really high in this tank, which didn't make a lot of sense to me. Couldn't figure out where all of the calcium and magnesium was coming from that was in this water. It was like at the highest point in the test strip, which is confusing. Also, the pH was really high. It was like higher than 7.5, maybe even 8, which is extremely bizarre. All of my tanks, this one, this one, this one, this one, all of them are really soft water, and the pH is usually around 6.5, but it's never even over 7 ever. And that's just because of my tap water. That's just how it comes out. Plus, we are running CO2 in this, so we have something that is contributing towards lowering the pH. Really no idea. So here is a test strip from that guy, reading the KH and GH immediately. That's the ones on the far right there. You can see that that's pretty high. I can't show you here with all of the things I have in my hands. We got to wait a little bit for the pH, but that is the holding tank, and that was basically what the original tank looked like. Let's grab another one here for the tank that they will be going into. So a quick test on that. Let's run back over to the light, and we're looking like normal levels. That's what I'm used to seeing. I think I touched a little bit with my thumb there, and that's why the corner is a little bit more purple. But you can see that difference. We're gonna have to ease these guys back in. You can already tell it hasn't been exactly 30 seconds yet, or 60 seconds. You can tell the pH on that holding tank is looking like it's gonna be higher. I think what I'm gonna do is just drip acclimate these guys into this tank. We'll take some water out of this and we'll start dripping in some of this, and everything should be all good. I got a little sidetracked with some other projects, so this is fast forward in the future about 2 weeks. It didn't take much longer than the last time you saw this tank for the wood to get waterlogged though. So the big rock has been off of this thing for about a week now. I'd say all in all it took about a week for this whole piece to waterlog. The fish have been hanging out in here. They got all adjusted to the normal water parameters. That is all my tanks, and now we're ready to complete this project. Before we do that, I noticed that my filter is totally clogged up, so I want to do some work on that. Normally with these Waza canister filters, it's pretty easy to service them and clean them out. So you have this top piece here that you can pull out, and that's all the pre-filter sponges. And even if I was just doing that, I'd still have to take the filter out of this space because we don't have enough clearance. So if we have to disengage the filter, all you have to do is turn this, and that is going to lock the water in the tubes. So we can detach this, and we're not going to have a bunch of water coming out. So as soon as we pop this thing off, I then turn the filter off, and then all the water is locked in here, and that way when we restart it, everything's all good. I also want to get in here and not only change out the pre-filter tower, but also everything that we have in the trays. Well, surprise, surprise, we did not quite finish the tank, guys. It has been, I don't know, maybe a month since the last part of footage you just saw. Just got super busy with things. This tank ended up sitting here with the fish in it. Everything was ready to go, and we started to get some really bad cyanobacteria. You can see the background is all kinds of crazy. I did treat this thing recently with some Fritz Maricin. That is, of course, an antibiotic. I don't like to have to do things like that. This was pretty much a last-ditch resort to salvage this aquascape, and it worked out really well. So the cyanobacteria just get slammed by that stuff, and you know, everything else is fine. So we're gonna go ahead and actually finish this up today. I'm gonna do some more algae scraping. We gotta rub a bunch of Anubias leaves to get those things a little bit more clean, and then we have to, of course, plant this and dress it up a little bit. I'm not gonna bore you with that. Let's fast forward a little bit to this thing looking nice. So there you have it, guys. We got some of the Rotala indica planted in there. Thankfully, we had some over in the sand waterfall tank. A lot more trimming to do on this bad boy, and this should be the next video, just so you know. All we're gonna do to this thing for now, so obviously it looks a little weird having those vertical stems in the center here, but the theory is that when this stuff is under high light, which we're gonna try and make this just as bright of a tank as we can, this Rotala should bend over. So you see how I have this one kind of, I've trained it almost to grow like that. That's what the Rotala is going to do if it is under a highlight enough environment. So we shouldn't have just a bunch of perfectly vertical stems growing up in the center. I don't think that would look good. We're going to hope that that's what happens to this tank. And I think if we can achieve that, it's going to look pretty good. Similar to how this stuff is growing over here in the Avatar tank. So when it's under super high light, it has that pressure, it doesn't need to grow up and search for the light. That's what we're gonna try and achieve. The last thing I have to do is clean up the little mess we made and hopefully never bump this thing ever so that we don't have to do that again. Now, this is of course home to all the Kurais. If you happen to be watching this video without any context, we do have some Cory cats in here that will probably rehome. They don't seem very happy in here. I don't have enough of them, and they don't really have much cover. They could, of course, go and hide under there, and you saw this dude is hiding right there still. He likes it there, but not an ideal thing for him, so we'll relocate him. All right, guys, so the tank is finally done, I think. So we have it planted here. We got the Rotala in place. It's not perfect. We have to let the plants have time to root themselves so we can go in and trim it, and I think that's really gonna help with the overall shape of this structure. The other thing that I wanna eventually do, hopefully soon, is get some Hygropenitophyta and add it to the mix here. I think that's just the perfect plant for this. Get them to attach themselves to the wood and turn that really red, bright red color that we like so much. Another thing that I did yesterday when I was finishing things up, besides not getting rid of that little bit of substrate that fell out, I'll do that before we end here, I promise, was I added in a little bit of the algae out. I just, you know, something that I don't really like to do, but given the fact that we had some algae, you know, on the leaves of the Anubias, the only way to really get that stuff killed off is to either go in there with hydrogen peroxide or just add some of this. So we added some of it. Hopefully we never have to do it again. I don't think we will. But other than that, the tank is pretty much done, with, you know, of course, adding some plants maybe to it a little bit later. So we need to let some time go by. Hopefully the moss can recover from being covered by that cyano for so long, really green up, start growing, get in there, trim it. That's all gonna help out. We have a lot of dirty components still left in here. Our CO2 diffuser, our output and our input are still, you know, really gross looking. I need to take some time and really clean those out if I wanted them to look seamless and blend in with the background. I'll get to it eventually. Sorry this video is so out of order, guys, but here we are in the future again. Just wanted to point out a couple things I saw that I missed in the video, which was really hanging this. So we just used our same fishing line, so we did a loop underneath, and then we tied it up above the light fixture. We did that, of course, at 2 points here. And yes, this is precarious, but it works. I have to be really careful when I'm in this thing. If I bump it, the substrate spills out the back and ends up down in that little spot down there. That's not ideal, but because the wood is, you know, waterlogged, we have to hold it up some way. So I think this is a pretty good way to do it. I think a better way would be to obviously attach it at the ceiling. And of course, if we had a proper canopy on this thing, if we were in a different dimension and we could do that, that would probably also be a good way to do it. This becomes even more precarious with the way that we have the light attached, which is just these little tiny brackets here on the current light. So I have to be really careful, but if you had a more sturdy light fixture as far as how it attached to the tank, then I think you would be a lot safer. Now, we don't have any cyanobacteria coming back in this tank, thank goodness, but we are still having issues with the algae on the Anubias leaves, which is a common problem to have. And you know, we obviously have this problem because we're mixing low light and high light plants. It's just something that sometimes you can get away with, and so I wanted to try it. But if this ends up not working and we need to rethink the plant situation, I think what I'll do is just turn this into more of just a green jungle theme. We'll swap out the Anubias and the higher light Rotala with just like Java Fern, you know, go with my default choices. I still think that would look really good, but we'll play it by ear. We'll see if we can pull this off. I'll keep working at it. I don't think I really spent any time talking about what this setup is comprised of, the tank, the stand, and all that. It's the current Serene setup. We did a video on this whole thing a long time ago, so if you're interested in this, I'm sure you can dig through the videos and find that, but I'll put a link to this setup in the description. It's a pretty good deal for a 4-foot rimless tank with a stand, so check that out if you're interested. I think that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll get you out a new video here pretty soon. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next time.